the data, where this comes from. And so we feel very, very confident in saying that not only does the company claim to work with Chinese military, Chinese security, and intelligence, but that we can actually track the individuals that have written this code, the individuals that own this company, and who they are connected to, who sits on the board of directors, and that, yes, they do actually, in fact, either work for the PLA or the Ministry of State Security, and so that this information is being used by the Chinese state to try and target influence operations or intelligence operations around the world.
Welcome back to episode 386, now with 14 million downloads. And we've got a very special guest here on the John Fredericks Radio Network on America's Voice.News, the platform of the Trump Revolution. It is now Dish Channel 219, also on Newsmax TV, now in 70 million homes, in Mandarin, on G News, GTV, on Roku, Pluto, Facebook, the Citizens of the American Republic site, every different news site around there. It's ubiquitous. And plus in the podcast, over 14 million downloads. This is episode 386. From episode 18, I think back in late January or the first couple of days of February, honored to have returning Professor Chris Balding. Remember, Professor Balding we had on, the episode was called, I think, Watch the Lights. And he had done a light analysis, everything about how China was shut down. He's the time really that people were sitting there and talking about how China had actually done a full lockdown. Well, with Dr. Yan today putting up her report, she's from Hong Kong University. She's a defector, now under security in a safe house in the United States. She's put up how it's nonsense it came from a wet market. It's nonsense it came from a bat cave. This was a gain of function, this was a human-adapted, a human-enhanced virus. And so we go back to the beginning. And now we've had this kind of another major whistleblower come forward with Professor Balding and others. The lesson here, Jack, Raheem, as I turn it back to you, is that the decent people in China, the hardworking Lao Beijing, have had a belly full of this. They are sick and tired of this totalitarian dictatorship. The same guys that threw Chris Balding out of China, the same people that drove Dr. Yan to leave her family, leave her friends, and the defect to the United States. And the Chinese Communist Party, you should understand, there are other defectors too around the Wuhan lab. And you're going to get the hammer dropped on you. No more lies, no more misrepresentations. They hacked the site this morning that Dr. Yan had the report up on. You can't hide anymore because it's not the West. It's not guys in Australia, the United States, or Canada. It's not Professor Balding in Vietnam. No, it's your own people. It's Chinese citizens. It's Lao Beijing, old 100 names. They are starting to say, no, we want to get the truth to the West. We want to get the truth to the world of exactly what this totalitarian regime is doing. Raheem, Jack, back to you in the studio for Professor Balding.
Hey, Professor Balding, it's Jack Maxey. Thank you so much for being on the show. I've really missed your insight. I have to tell you, I've wanted you on probably every week since you were last on because of your insight into what's going on in China. As far as this most recent thing, this report that they're gathering information on potentially tens, hundreds of thousands of people around the world, including organizations, etc. When they say it's all open source, can you define open source for me, or are they getting actually internal things like I saw in the interview you did the other day, pay things like that? When we say open source, I just would like to have that defined for me. Can you help me out on that?
Sure. So by our estimates, about 80% of the data is what we would consider open source. And open source, probably the simple definition is that it would come from something you could find in a Google search or something similar. News articles, legal records, things like that. I think what is interesting is people hear open source and they immediately think that it doesn't have that much value. But I think there's a couple of very interesting things to note. Intelligence agencies, pretty much universally have said that, the large amount of information that you will collect on individuals and the most usable information is what we would generally refer to as open source information. There's in this specific database there is no sex tapes, for lack of a better term, like that. So I think it's important to note that just because it's open source does not mean that it's irrelevant or unimportant data. It's actually very important data. I think another thing that is very important to note about this data is how it is compiled. And there's a lot of overlapping data that goes into that. So, for instance, some of this data comes from the company what we call crawling internet sites. So, if you have a social media page, if you have Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of that will be in this database, helping them develop a profile of who you are. It also crawls other sites. If you have biographical data, if you have legal records, other things like that, it will be putting all of that database. So if they want to develop a profile of you because they know somebody is going to meet you, or if they're going to try and influence you, they can immediately pull up a profile of who you are. The last thing is that while most of this data is open source, there is definitely no questions asked, not what we would call non-public information about this, about individuals, some individuals in this database that really lends out a full picture. Some of this we have reason to believe is hacked data. So it really helps them develop a full profile of who are individuals, who are institutions that we need to be targeting, and how do we go about doing that.
Professor Rahim Kassam here. I wanted to jump in and ask you, I mean, I agree with you when people hear open source, they think, oh, it's all freely available anyway, but it isn't necessarily all freely, completely available, and isn't necessarily all tied together as they'll be doing on a project like this. And I want to ask you, as a result of that level of thinking, would this be why perhaps the Chinese Communist Party would be so reluctant to allow the TikTok algorithm to fall into Western hands? Is there, for instance, a possibility that was being used? I mean, we know the sons and daughters of very high-profile people, especially in the White House, have been using that app. They will be using it on home Wi-Fi networks. Would that be one of the reasons? Has an app like TikTok been crawling behind the scenes and storing up all this data?
Yes, that absolutely. So we in this specific database, there is no evidence of TikTok data being in this database that I can think of off the top of my head, although it's a very large database, so it is possible. But the broader issue of what you're referring to, of TikTok data providing, let's say, usable information about what the children of senior politicians are doing online, is absolutely concern. One thing that we can say about this specific database, for instance, is that individuals received scores. And we don't know the exact scoring classification of how these scores were created, but we can say with certainty that in many countries, the children of politicians received very high scores. In some countries, the highest scores of any individuals in those countries. So they clearly target the children of politicians in numerous countries. We also can say, for instance, from other databases, not this specific database, that that the state of China absolutely has complete access to the data that, for instance, TikTok gathers, and that TikTok gathers data beyond what would be in Europe or the United States considered normal operating data to operate a platform of that type. So I think it is a very well-founded concern that President Trump has, and exactly why Beijing is probably rather reluctant to allow that type of intellectual property into American hands.
Steve?
Professor, before we lose you, just the one thing I want to get to is: do you think America? Australia's probably waking up to this, but does America understand the level of information war that the Chinese Communist Party is really running against the West? Do you think people are awakening to this, or you think people still don't get how intense the Chinese Communist Party's information war is?
I don't think Americans understand, and I would even say, even many people that follow China understand how deep China's information warfare on China is. This database was created specifically, according to the company, for information warfare, hybrid warfare. They are using this data for that purpose. And they have an entire branch of the Chinese government called the United Front that is dedicated to influence and influence operations. So I think it's not something, even by many people that follow China, the depth of Chinese information warfare here.
Professor Balding, how do people get more access? You've been a huge hit with our audience. How do people get more access to you in your writings over at Fulbright University in Vietnam?
The primary way is I update my blog regularly, baldingsworld.com, and frequently publish through other channels. But baldingsworld.com is the best way to go.
Steve,
we'll link to that. I want to thank you.
Go ahead. While we've got Dr. Balding here, I'd love to find out what his perspective is on the flood and how it's affecting the Chinese economy right now. If you would go into that, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah. I think what we're basically seeing that is really interesting is that the Chinese government is pumping enormous amounts of money into the economy, but you're still not seeing, let's say, the demand side rebound. And so you're seeing a lot of things like construction. You're seeing output in steel, but you're definitely not seeing the consumer side coming back. There's a lot of evidence that unemployment is significantly higher than reported. Of course, Chinese data is always very suspect, but all the independent indicators say that unemployment is significantly higher, and that inventories in a lot of industries are continuing to grow and not hitting final destinations where they're being consumed or used in invested products. And so that is, for a country the size of China to keep factories moving but not consuming those products, at some point it catches up with you.
One other thing, the crops, they're saying today that Xinhua came out saying that they're going to have a bumper crop this fall, and 70% of the country's annual grain output comes with the autumn harvest. How do you think that really looks?
I think that's very difficult, especially for grain. With the amount of rain that they've had, that may be positive for rice in the south, but in other areas, that's going to be a lot more difficult for a lot of the grains that they harvest in the central and northern areas. It's going to be a lot more difficult to hit the numbers that they're talking about.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Doctor. You're just always the best. I'd love to hold you over if the rest of the group would agree, but we'll see. What do you think, Steve? We have time, or if the doctor could stick with us?
I jumped to another thing. Professor Ball, we have on later in the week, just amazing report and great work on getting this whistleblower to come forward and get this information. It's something that's been world news. Yeah. Thank you so much.
We're going to go to a quick break here. Jack Maxey, Stephen K. Bannon. Thanks to Professor Balding. I'm Raheem Kassam. We'll be back. More War and Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Bear imagines close contests in Arizona and Florida where Republican-controlled governments could argue that the election was marred by irregularities and change the law to allow themselves to appoint the Republican slate of electors, even though the Democrats might have gotten more votes. In Wisconsin, where state government is divided, Bear imagines the following sequence of events. The Republican-controlled legislature also moves to change the manner of designating electors and to approve those pledged to Trump. However, the Democratic governor, invoking Wisconsin state law, signs and affixes the state's seal to the slate of electors for Joe Biden, as certified by the State Elections Commission. In Bear's vision, Trump mobilizes his base to go out and protest, tweeting, "Thank you, Wisconsin. Don't let your governor rob your president." Is there a way out of this national nightmare? Well, two powerful forces could ensure that America, already tarnished by its handling of COVID-19, does not also end up the poster child for dysfunctional democracy around the world. The first is the media. We have to abandon the notion of election night and prepare the public for election month. In fact, states have never certified winners on election night. News organizations tend to do that on the basis of statistical projections. It's time we educate the public to wait for the actual ballots to be counted.
From my mouth to Fareed Zakaria's ears. Remember, a month ago, the War on Pandemic crowd learned we said they're not going to make a call. AP's not going to make a call. I want to hear you guys in the live chat if you remember us saying that. And now look at what CNN, Fareed Zakaria, by the way, Fareed Zakaria, who served on the 21st Century Council of the Berggruen Institute. That's that think tank's China arm. He served alongside Chinese Communist Party members, and the Berggruen Institute is one of the organizations in the back of the Transition Integrity Project, along with the Open Society Institutes. Those are the two big organizations behind it. Fareed Zakaria didn't disclose that he was part of the Berggruen Institute when he went into that tirade. But let me explain to you. I want you to mark your calendars down. It's Monday, September 14th, and I am telling you this, ladies and gentlemen. The next step they take is to urge the foundation of an electoral commission, much like Britain's electoral commission, much like the French Constitutional Council. What they want to do, and if this sounds boring, you better get your head out of that mind space. This is everything right now. What they want to do is take out of the hands of elected members the decisions over contested elections. So the thesis goes that elected members and party lines will always vote for their party in the event of a disputed district, for instance. And therefore that shouldn't be the case because they are naturally going to side with their own party, and therefore that power should rest with some new bureaucrats and a new electoral commission. And America's seen an electoral commission before, and guess when it was? We told you on the show, again, a month ago, that 1876 election, where they established a short-term, quote-unquote, electoral commission. And that found its genesis in the Grenville Act. It was the Parliamentary Democracy Act in the United Kingdom in the 1770s. Americans will remember Grenville for another reason, the Prime Minister at the time of the Revolution. But the point being that the British Parliament at that point in time took the power away from the House of Commons to decide on disputed elections and handed it to an external body. Now, that external body first was constituted of Commons members, but it now rests in the hands of an unelected bureaucracy called the Electoral Commission. France has a very similar body as well, and this is where they're going. That's why he says there's no election night. It's election month, because in the next coming days and weeks, you're going to hear from the left, from the Transition Integrity Project, and all these other groups that we need an independent electoral commission to decide what happens on November the 4th, and it will be a month after that and more, by the way, until they reach a verdict. Steve.
Okay, they're trying to socialize this. You see exactly. But Zakara's script was scary in that we talked about this specifically, I think, 3 weeks ago. They're trying to socialize this now in American people's mind. No election nights, election month. He brought the Hawkfitch situation. They're talking about how they got to count these ballots. I think we got breaking news. One of our producers got in North Carolina, 75% of the ballots that are in that have been rejected are coming from Democrats. I mean, this is going to be a fracas. This is going to be the toughest fight in American election history. You see what Fareed Zakaria just said. We're not going to declare a winner on election night, right? Because this is going to take a month. It's going to take a month for them to try to steal the election that Donald Trump's going to win overwhelmingly on the 3rd of November of this year. So, Raheem, you're absolutely correct. Raheem, I think we ought to get Nigel and Jerome from France, Nigel from the UK. We got to get some experts. They've tried to do this before. We've got to be on point on this and thinking ahead. of everything they're going to try to do to try to steal the presidency from Donald J. Trump.
One thing I think is important, Steve, for our listeners to understand, we're talking about they don't want the Electoral College, right? Let's remember why our founding fathers created the Electoral College. This was so cities like Philadelphia would not entirely dominate the presidential election, even during colonial times. This exists so that the madness that we see on the streets of San Francisco and Los Angeles and New York and Baltimore do not become the norm in Des Moines and the rest of the country. There is a concrete rationale behind this that we need to defend on that basis. I don't think we need to let them change the narrative and try and redefine the Constitution, which even all of those punks took an oath to.
Raheem, let's go through some polling and how they're trying to already suppress the vote with this polling, and the fake news are coming out with the polling.
Yeah. So I think it was yesterday morning that this ABC poll came out, ABC Ipsos poll, which seemed to show the president in some trouble polling-wise. Now, we're used to seeing that from the polling, but there are some which you can explicitly look at and say, wow, this is really just a public relations attempt. It's not even an attempt to survey the public and get their opinions on this. So the poll shows that President Trump is upside down on the pandemic and that people disagree with him over his alleged comments about the military. But then you go into the crosstabs on the polling. That is the PDF that comes with the polling on the poll, or should come with the polling on the polling reports, right? And sometimes they leave it out because they're really embarrassed about their methodologies. This time around, it was very hard to find some of the methodology stuff, but I did get to it in the end. And just at a cursory glance, I just laughed. I laughed out loud when I saw this thing, and I'll tell you why. The polling surveyed just 533 people. 533 people. To be a nationally recognized poll. Now, they say they can do all of this mathematical jiggery-pokery and expand the things out to be nationally reflective. That's not true. Mathematicians will tell you that's not true if you get them if you get them on deep background on this stuff. The truth being that these polls are used to sway public opinion rather than reflect public opinion. Here's the other part of it. So you've got a bad sample size in the first place. You've got a particularly higher than average margin of error. I mean, I look for margins of error in these polling of about 2.5 to 3%. That's about right. This one was a 5% margin of error here. Right off the bat, you can throw off 5% of the results that you're getting here, and that's not a good place to be in. Then you look at who they chopped up, who they stacked. So they chop it up. 31% of the people they surveyed were Democrats. 38% of the people they surveyed were independents, and just 25% of the people they surveyed were Republicans. Now, it's interesting to me that the pollster themselves, Ipsos, because ABC doesn't do the polling, Ipsos does the polling, and Ipsos actually did not disclose party identity, the verifier on their poll. What they said is, quote, party ID benchmarks are from recent ABC News / Washington Post telephone polls. Now, I can go into a whole talk about telephone polls another time and the random digit dial methodology that they use and how that's unreliable. I mean, I did all this legwork back in 2016, and they're reusing the same tactics they used in 2016. But interestingly, I went to look at those Washington Post ABC telephone polls, and sure enough, just like this one, the July poll quizzed 522 Biden supporters versus 399 Trump supporters. That's a 27% inbuilt bias for Biden supporters in the ABC polls. And then finally, what was really interesting to me about all of this was that the poll itself, when you go down and you look into the detail on this, it doesn't actually tell you much about the demographic that they quiz. They don't actually get into is it registered voters, is it likely voters, and the truth is they don't, because it isn't. This is a general population poll, which are screamingly irrelevant when you look at these things. You need to talk to likely voters. You certainly need to talk to registered voters. And Ipsos and ABC did neither of those things. So those 3 or 4 things, those are glaringly embarrassing ways to do a poll, Steve.
Yeah, this is message polling, right? They're trying to put forward a message here. I'd like to know insights. We got a couple of minutes left in this segment from you guys from the polling that came out over the weekend. I really liked some of the things in the Fox poll, although it had Biden up 51-46 nationally. I love what it said about the Hispanics, with Trump with 41%. And I love what it said about, hey, what do you think? What are your neighbors saying? Who's going to win? And I think Trump won in a big margin that. We've only got a minute. Hashtag war and pandemic, the live stream. We want to hear your voice, comments, observations. It's global Chinese Communist Party information warfare, and also information warfare against the President of the United States by the mainstream media, the Democratic Party. Raheem, back to you and Jack to take us out. We got Chris Fenton next, and then we're going to get back to Raheem's analysis of where we stand in this current race.
Okay, guys, I want to make one comment about some of the analysis on the voting, the Hispanic votes. We're talking about the Puerto Rican votes in Florida. Look at Carmen Yulin Cruz, the one who was the mayor of San Juan. She got blown out in her attempt to run for governor. This is what we're looking at. The Puerto Ricans support President Trump. Back in just 1 minute.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Although China, I must tell you, got a real problem with China. What they did with us, we can never forget that. We made a great trade deal. The ink wasn't dry when the plague came in from China. They stopped it from going into China, but they didn't stop it from going in to our country, Europe, and the rest of the world, okay? They could have done that. But you see, I deal with all of these people, and they don't have the kind of mental problem that Sleepy Joe has. They're very sharp. Kim Jong-un doesn't know about the problems that Joe has. We need very sharp people. I'm sorry. Joe is not qualified for this position.
The ink was not dry when they released the plague. Well, President Trump will make sure that he gets a copy of Dr. Yan's report. Dr. Yan from Hong Kong University, the reference lab of the WHO, one of the most prestigious labs in the world, with Gabriel Leung, the epidemiologist, and Malik Perez, the virologist, the guys that oversaw SARS-1. She's breaking a huge report today up on one of these academic websites, a detailed report that says, hey, guess what? Not a wet market. Didn't come from a bat cave. Nope. This came from a gain-of-function experiments, human enhanced, that this is not a natural virus. This is a man-made virus. And now that story is on fire. That website is now crashing all the time, so many people are downloading the report. Yes, the president knows we have a major problem, not with China. We don't have a problem with the country, and we don't have a problem with the people. In fact, it's the people that are turning over this information. What we got a problem with is the Chinese Communist Party. And particularly, we got a problem with the West, with capital markets, financial institutions, corporations, Silicon Valley, Hollywood, and Wall Street that are propping up this totalitarian regime because they're in business with them. Now we've got the author of the book, Feeding the Dragon, Chris Fenton. He was an executive and a producer in Hollywood. He saw it firsthand, as what Miles Grove says, the kowtowing of Hollywood to the Chinese Communist Party. This book's on fire. You got to buy this book, because the higher up the ratings the book goes, higher up Amazon and New York Times bestseller list, the left, CNN and MSNBC, are going to be forced to book Brother Fenton so you can get on there and tell them the truth about the Chinese Communist Party. Remember, they want to make sure that nobody hears about this, nobody sees it. It's all President Trump's fault. No, as President Trump said, the ink was not dry. Remember, we know for a fact, because she's admitted it. She admitted that no later than the 4th or 5th of January, he talked to everybody in Wuhan. We actually know that they know about it as early as the last week of December. We know that from Dr. Yan, because she was in communications with Beijing CDC. So that means they knew about it before they sent the delegation over here to the East Room to have that signing ceremony. It was like the negotiators with Cordell Hall before Pearl Harbor. They're actually over at the State Department when they're bombing Pearl Harbor. Well, the delegation led by Li He, the Chinese Communist Party senior cadre understood that they had a major human-to-human transmission community spread in Hubei province in the city of Wuhan, where guess what? There's a P4 and a P3 lab, right? And it's that P4 lab that this virus came from, a man-enhanced virus from a gain-of-function experiment. That's all going to be in Dr. Yan's report. Everybody will be able to get to read it. Now I want to bring in Chris Fenton. Chris, huge front page story in the New York Times on Saturday. I think you were prominently in about the movie Mulan, and Disney is like in the end credits giving a hat tip to the people that are building the concentration camps, people running the concentration camps. What is the problem with Disney? I mean, they're in business with the Chinese Communist Party. They're supposed to be there. Walt Disney was all about the American family and about, American ideals and the spirit of freedom and freedom of religion, freedom of speech. I mean, it was Americana. He believed in the nuclear family. They believed in the goodness of America. He believed in spreading the word. What is wrong with Disney? How did they get involved in this movie, and how did they make it a propaganda piece? And then to sit there and to say thank you to the people that really have concentration camps and genocide against the Uyghurs.
Well, it's a great question. And first of all, thanks for having me back, and thanks for the quick plug. I mean, thanks to your listeners and your audience. We're moving up the charts, and that means the left side of mainstream media cannot ignore this book anymore as much as they want to. So, yes, I was on the cover of New York Times, but I need to keep climbing these lists so that I can get my op-eds out there. I can get on CNN. I can get on MSNBC, because quite frankly, that's where the bubble is in regards to getting the attention of Hollywood, the tech business, and also the sports industry. So thank you so much there. In regards to the Disney question, that goes right back into your theme today of information warfare. I mean, as much as soft power influence and that information that is in a piece of content that spreads around the world can spread CCP narrative, the same thing is in regards to what's not told out there. So the fact that Disney is staying quiet on this issue in regards to Xinjiang province and the Uyghur atrocities, and probably really wanted to make sure that that special thanks section in the end credits was never, ever sort of noticed by journalists, that just goes right into information warfare. I mean, there's soft power influence with things that are proactively put in content, and then there's soft power influence that is part of what's the censorship of the CCP narrative globally. So it goes right into the themes of this show today.
Chris, we did a special with Miles Guo on Saturday, and Miles is sitting there. He's launching G Fashion and G Music. He's got this #1 song throughout the world, Take Down CCP. Yeah, I know. But here's the point. He understands, he's taking the strategy America used against the Soviet Union, that it's culture, it's Levi's, rock and roll, Coca-Cola that was one of the big elements. Culture is upstream from politics, as Andrew Breitbart said. So he's taken this, that the culture, modern culture, particularly American culture, which Chinese people love, will be a major element to bring down the CCP. Right now, because you're a major executive and a producer in Hollywood, he actually singled out Hollywood on the Saturday show, said they still kowtow. He says you can't start a big movie in Hollywood unless you basically get the sign off of the Chinese Communist Party, because the Chinese market has become so important, and they won't let you in there if there's anything that they don't agree with. Is Miles Guo right on that?
He's 100% right. Unfortunately, that's part of the premeditated censorship that goes on in the United States in regards to content. In fact, my book in particular has been looked at by several showrunners in regards to adapting into some sort of really fun series that tackles the subject. But there is a lot of discussion as to what the throwback would be from the CCP in China, and whether that would dampen any sort of possible monetization by whatever studio or platform is involved with it. So it's a very important aspect of it. And if you even look at the way the CIA has used soft power over the years, in fact, there's a great podcast called Wind of Change, which is about this Scorpion song that may or may not have been used to help overthrow the USSR back in the late 80s. But even in my book, I talk about the power of Big Macs and David Hasselhoff in regards to overthrowing the USSR's form of communism around the world. The same thing can be done in regards to the CCP someday. But we need to be able to be free with the content that we're putting into that market so that the people of China can actually see the power of Western democracy in our content.
You know, his brother Jack Maxey that brought up David Hasselhoff on her Saturday special, saying Miles's song "Take Down the CCP" and his new one, "The Roar from the Vast Ocean, Vast Sea," were like Hasselhoff, that classic moment when he was on the Berlin Wall singing that helped bring down the Berlin Wall. But Chris, if you got a chance to be in the Oval Office today with the president, although he's in Vegas, when he gets back, if you were sitting there and you were saying, "Hey, Mr. President, this is my recommended course of action for you versus the CCP in these aspects of information warfare, cultural warfare," what would Chris Fenton recommend to the president?
Well, first of all, I would say to President Trump, I love "Make America Great" as far as a really simple slogan that gives a message. So what about a slogan like patriotism before capitalism? And we apply that to everything we do moving forward. I'm all for free markets and I'm all for capitalism. But what happens if we go back to the way the first 200 years of this country was, where we put patriotism prior to that capitalistic ideal? Number one. Number two is I'd give a simple, practical, applied experience that I had that goes right into this TikTok situation that he has to decide on. Information warfare. I remember taking 2 executives over to China, and I actually talked about it in the book, and colleagues of mine said, "Hey, do you want us to work with the CCP and Air China to make sure that you sit in between the 2 executives so that you can talk to them?" And I said, "Well, how do you do that?" And they said, "Oh, well, we have ways to get you in that seat." And I said, "Really?" And they said, "Oh, all the time. Government officials always try to finagle a seat next to somebody they want to take a close look at." So that's a perfect real-life practical example of what's happening with TikTok. And the fact that the Australians just uncovered the way that they're looking at what you would call sort of public normal information and then compiling it in big data storage and then using AI to try to come up with theories and practical uses for it that can be used against us. That's the same thing that's happening with TikTok. And I know that Larry Ellison at Oracle are very tight with the administration, but we need to think hard about the red line in the sand that we created there in regards to what we're going to do with TikTok. And I don't think, from what I'm hearing, that deal on the table suffices what we want as national security issue interests protected.
Wow, Chris, are you recommending, look, we consider ourselves the hardcore, but are you recommending that you think TikTok should just be shut down, particularly in the West, and not allow Oracle or Ellison or anybody to buy it?
I would like to see all the operations and all the algorithms and any sort of data controlled here in the United States without any oversight or ownership by ByteDance whatsoever. That's essentially what the administration put out there prior to this thing. I don't see the Oracle deal being what that is. It looks like it's a partnership with ByteDance, some sort of minority interest stake, and then a management agreement the same way like the Four Seasons might manage a hotel that's actually owned by the Chinese. That makes no sense to me, and it definitely doesn't protect us from national security interest problems.
Chris, how do people get access to your social media? How do they get access to your writing, and how do they get access to the book Feeding the Dragon, which all of our audience should go out and buy today?
Yeah, I would go on to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or even the Post Hill Press publishing site to buy it. I really appreciate that because that is going to create the platform where I continue to be a squeaky wheel in this and hopefully draw in a lot more squeaky wheels in the process because we're going to need them all. In regards to Twitter, I'm at the Dragon Feeder, and I constantly am on there, and I love engaging with anybody that's interested in this subject. It's super fun, and I keep them apprised of all information that's current, and I think they'll enjoy engaging with me.
Chris Fenton, thank you. Honored to have you on again. Look forward to having you back on shortly. Chris Fenton, author of Okay, I want to hear from everybody in hashtag War and Pandemic, everybody in the live feed. I want to hear, particularly Raheem and Jack, as you take the show out, patriotism before capitalism. Wow, I can already see the heads blowing up right now. Raheem, Jack, back to you guys.
Yeah, well, I would agree with it. Patriotism before capitalism. I'm not sure that our history is rife with examples of it. We had Lehman Brothers funding the cotton crops of the South, and we had American businessmen working with the Nazis all the way up until the war broke out. A perfect example, I'd love to talk to Chris about it further, is Hollywood's cooperation with the Nazi authorities with movies back in that era. Okay, guys, we're going to be back here in just a few minutes. We are always on it. We're trying to keep you guys informed every single day so that we can make this world safer, a better place, and help free the Lao Baixing of China and free the entire planet. Back in 1 minute.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
The Chinese Communist Party that has information warfare against us. Remember, in unrestricted warfare, you've got the information and tech warfare and cyber. You've got economic warfare, and you've got kinetic. And it's bad enough as all these exposés are coming out globally about the Chinese Communist Party. But guys, you have information warfare here at home. I mean, Fareed Zakaria, CNN, we told you, and we've told you, we're going to lay it out every day, how they're trying to socialize this concept that it's not election day anymore, it's election month. It's basically how long they need to steal it, right? If it takes a week, it's a week. It'll be election week. If it takes a month, it's a month. If it takes all the way up to close to midnight on the 19th of January, the year of our Lord, 2021, the day before Donald Trump should be inaugurated, right, again, for his re-election. It'll take however long they need. They're starting to socialize it right now. Don't be fooled. Remember, I said this on the John Fredericks radio show earlier today. It's time to put away the golf clubs. It's time to, I know you're not watching NFL. Don't even watch college football, though college football is coming back because of President Trump. It's time to drop all the hobbies. Here's what your hobby should be. Getting this show out to every person on the planet that you know daily. Tweeting it out, pushing it out on your social media, talking about it, talking about what you're hearing, going and linking to these news sites, the National Pulse, Revolver, Citizens Free Press, What Finger, all of it. You go to Gateway Pundit. You've got the Virginia Star, all the Michael Patrick Leahy papers. Go to all of these sites, okay? Start spreading this information, number one. Number two, you've got to get there, work a phone bank. You've got to go door to door. You've got to bring as many people as possible. This is about mobilization. Mobilization, no longer about persuasion, it's about mobilization. All the polls show that Raheem's going to get into for a second. And then you've got to volunteer to be a poll watcher, or most importantly, get your local election commission and sign up to be an election official. Remember, not in the room, not in the deal. You're already seeing ballots being rejected in North Carolina. Where are you? This is American history. The next 5 or 6 months are going to be, you think it's been intense before the Trump administration? You think it was intense in 2016? You ain't seen nothing yet. Okay? One of the reasons I'm not back on the campaign, I knew that this was going to be, the campaign was fine. Great people. President Trump's, the incumbent is doing it from the Oval Office, got a great team. They don't need help. What we need help is securing the election of Donald J. Trump, the 45th president of the United States, because Fareed Zakaria just said it. We ought to start thinking about election month. We're not going to name any winner on the election day. They need however long they need to steal this, okay? And what we need to do is steal yourself, right? That you're not going to give up, you're not going to relent, that this is going to be absolutely all in. You've got 5 months of grinding to go, and guess what? When President Trump's inaugurated at noon on the 20th of January, the year of our Lord 2021, they're going to start already with an impeachment. Raheem Dassan broke it last week. They got another whistleblower. They got more whistleblowers. They're going to have all of this. So if you love your country, if you want to keep this republic that Franklin warned us about was going to go, if you want to remember what Reagan said, freedom's only one generation away, don't let it be our generation. Boomers, stand up, put your shoulder to the wheel. Okay, Raheem, I want to talk to you. By the way, the story that's blowing up, talking about whistleblowers, Dr. Yan, her report on this is a man-made virus coming from the Wuhan lab, courtesy of the Chinese Communist Party. If you're not able to pay your rent, you can't watch football, the whole thing's a nightmare. You don't know where your next paycheck coming from. You got the guys in Beijing to thank, and you particularly got Beijing Biden and the rest of his buddies that support him. Raheem, Jack, back to you.
Yeah, I want to stress what you just said there about election month as well. Look, ladies and gentlemen, think about it this way. developed countries have election night. Banana republics have election month or months. And that's what the Democrats are trying to do here. It's very clear. If you want to get more into this, I can give you a whole bunch of resources to do so. We have an amazing scoop coming out on the National Pulse today at 12:30, which will tell you more about the impetus behind all of this. And let me tell you something, especially if the President of the United States is listening, it goes right to the top. I mean, right to the top. So you're going to want to pay very, very close attention to that. The media is paying very close attention to the Latino vote, as you said, Stephen. I just want to make mention of that very quickly. The Washington Post themselves running an article yesterday about the anxiety amongst Democrats as far as it comes to the Latino vote. Places like Arizona, certainly places like Florida. And the polling is showing that the president is in an incredibly strong position with Latino voters up and down the country. And, I don't think I need to explain why. But, Jack, I'm sure you have your thoughts on that.
Well, I think Latino voters, and I'm actually hate using these terms like Latino, Hispanic. Right. Human beings with Spanish surnames are generally Catholic, are generally conservative, generally have strong family values, generally are opposed to all of the platforms of the Democratic Party. So this should be no surprise to anybody. Right.
But what the distinction is, Jack, is that there has been this latent acceptance of that rationale for Latinos or Hispanics voting conservative in the past, but the numbers are just going off the charts with Trump. And that's because it's something different, right, about Trump than your average establishment Republican who might be Catholic, who might be God-fearing, who might be family-orientated and appeal to Latinos on that sense. But Trump gives it that extra oomph.
Well, let's remember why so many of these people came to this country. They came to this country to escape the kind of terror that the Democrats want to impose here. You see this from people from Nicaragua. You see it from El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala. Definitely see it from people who are from Venezuela. This is true for all of the amazing Cuban Americans who are here. Thank God you were able to get to this country and help change it for the better.
But I also think it's the wall in economic nationalism. The Hispanic community understands that economic nationalism works for them, right? You bring the jobs and factories back to China. You limit the labor pool of illegal aliens. Wages are going to go up. They're going to get into STEM programs. This is President Trump's a striver's economy. Steve Cortez has preached this from day one. 100%. I think you're starting to see it in the numbers.
Steve, one
the
more
Hispanic
thing.
community are saying they support.
Yeah.
They want to have border security. They want a secure, sovereign America, right? And they are, I think, going to be part of the building blocks of the deplorables. That's one of the reasons we do this show, and particularly the Bernie Bros. When all the economic nationalists, the Bernie Bros. Support President Trump. Okay, we got to bolt. National Pulse on this afternoon. Revolver. We didn't get the Revolver lead story was about a military coup with Mattis. A brilliant story. Go to Revolver and read. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam. Want to thank everybody on our production team, AVN, John Fredericks, Vish, Jack, everybody making the show happen. Dan, see you tomorrow at 10.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you then 3 p.m. The National Pulse. Don't miss out.